with Forest Lakes because Forest Lakes was a big part of my life when it first started, and then of course now I live there as well. So I know a lot about that as well.
Fantastic. A lot we're going to cover. And on a Monday, how are you feeling before we start, Nikki Chambliss?
Oh, feeling fantastic.
Yeah.
Though that whole time change is killing me just a little bit. I have to admit, I'm just saying, I don't do that well.
The time change is something we're all getting used to here. Give the show a like and a share. We are live on every social media platform known to mankind. Judah Wickower is our director. And we can rock and roll when you're ready to go, Judah. Guys, good Monday morning. Thank you kindly for joining us. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk here on the I Love Seville Network. We are live across all social media platforms in Charlottesville, Central Virginia, and the Commonwealth, the country, and the world. And today's show is absolutely dynamite. We have Nikki Chambliss on a Monday. It's the Monday Market Monitor, where we talk real estate and numbers and stats and trends. And she has welcomed A-plus people to the program. And Amanda Spigoni, someone I have known for 17 years, which is awesome. First met Amanda, who you will see in a matter of moments, at the Villas at Southern Ridge, as well as her fantastic dad, Rick Spigoni. I remember distracting Rick from the sales office at the Villas from time to time and encouraging him to play ping pong or table tennis with me in the clubhouse across from the sales office. Just fantastic realtor, so is Nikki. And we're going to highlight some of the historical elements of neighborhoods and brands that you know in Central Virginia. Iconic ones like Old Trail, like Forest Lakes, like Dunlora, brands that not only are home to a lot of people, but neighborhoods that took quite a bit of effort to develop. Judah Wickower is our director. Why don't we go to the three-shot and welcome the ladies to the program, Nikki Chambliss and Amanda Spigoni. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
Nikki, we know you. You do a great job on Mondays. How about a spotlight here for Amanda, and introduce yourself to everybody that's watching.
Hi, I'm Amanda Spigoni. I have lived in Charlottesville all my life. Grew up around real estate, but I've been a licensed realtor for about 23 years now with Keller Williams, and the team director for the Alliance Home Team at Keller Williams. Fantastic.
She knows the business. She grew up in the business. Like I said, with her dad, Rick Spigoni. Nikki Chambliss, put in perspective Amanda and her importance and influence with Keller Williams over there.
Oh gosh, well she's amazing, but part of what that team that she runs is, it's what we call the Market Center team. So this is a large dependent model for real estate that is also our new agent training program. So it's really amazing. When I think back 5 years ago when I got into real estate, you were just kind of on your own, right? I had some support, but it was also like either you're going to make it or you're not, and right? Most of the people I came into real estate with are no longer in real estate. There's some of us that are a handful that are still doing it, still succeeding, and they're amazing. But this is a program that helps you jump into real estate, not have all of those failures on your own. It gives you that support. It gives you the ability to jump in and actually make money within a decent amount of time, so that's not so stinking hard. You still have to work hard, you still have to work smart, but it gives you a structure in which to do that like our larger support levels don't require. You know, it's not like there's an apprenticeship that's required for getting a real estate license.
Very nice. Very nice. So we got a couple mortgage officers watching, folks from Real Estate 3, folks from Nest on the program, Long and Foster, hello, Vanessa Parkhill in Earlysville, Emily Ann Coulter in the mortgage business watching the program. So we'll take kind of a historical tour of some neighborhoods here. And I think one that you know perhaps better than most is Forest Lakes.
I do. I know Forest Lakes very well. Forest Lakes was started in the mid-'80s, what I remember it was like 1987. I was in middle school. Not to date myself, but I was in middle school, and my dad got this project, Forest Lakes, first planned unit development in Charlottesville. I remember I remember Forest Lakes when it was nothing but red clay, a trailer, and as I would characterize them, vision boards, because it was before the technology and the that you could do the virtual tours, and they had this concept of offering different levels of price points for the public, and so they had a entry level neighborhood, then they had a move up, and it kind of went up from there, and then they had the largest lots with the largest homes. And one of the things that they did, really, in my opinion, they did really well, and things that I remember about it, is they started with the clubhouse and the pool. So Frank Kessler, who was the developer, visionary, with Steve Runkle, they started Forest Lakes. Been one of the first things, the story that my dad always likes to tell, is I was standing and they were turning. It was the ceremony to turn on the water slide at the pool, and Mr. Kessler looked at me and said, "Don't you want to live here too?" And apparently I went home and said, "Hey, I think we need to move to Forest Lakes," because at the time we were living out in Ivy, so we moved to Forest Lakes. I think part of it was the convenience of the community, the trails that it offered. I had a sister that was a toddler at the time, so there was a big age difference. But my mom was running my older sister, and well, she's not my older sister, but my older of my younger sisters, and I around, and all the way always going into Charlottesville. And so it was a convenience being closer into town than Ivy was at the time. It's a lot different now, the commutes, but at the time it would seem like we were always in the car driving to Charlottesville from Ivy.
Can you highlight for everyone Frank Kessler and the influence he had, not just with Forest Lakes, but just who the guy he was, how he got into this game, ties to the community, ties to UVA? I mean, your family knows him better than most.
We do. He was a developer. He was actually he was one of the founders of Real Estate 3, he started the Kessler Group, which was a development company, and he did the development of Forest Lakes, and then the idea was a move up of Glenmore. So then Glenmore became the next sort of phase of his career. But he'd been in Charlottesville for a really long time. He managed a restaurant called Lupo's, as I recall, which had apparently really good steak and cheese hoagies, and I think that's actually where my parents got engaged.
Get out of town. I did not know that.
So it was kind of just long history, but...
Rick proposed to your mom outside Lupo's?
Oh, yeah, over steak and cheese hoagies.
Very nice, Rick Spagoni.
Hey, they have been married 50 years, so something worked.
It worked well. Yeah, I love it.
50 years this coming August.
Congratulations.
Yeah. My dad was at the University of Virginia. My mom was a local, and they got engaged. But anyway, it was just... but he managed Lupo's, or he owned Lupo's or something like that. I know that he had a tie to Lupo's. But yeah, so he was a visionary of Forest Lakes, kind of offering the different price points, having the planned unit development, having the different levels for different types of buyers. They ended up doing a townhome section, so then there were the townhomes, it really met everybody's kind of needs. And then they also had the commercial element of having the Food Lion, and when it first started, the CVS was next door, so you kind of had the drugstore, the grocery store, there were some restaurants in there, and it was all walkable with the walking trails. There was the tunnel under the road, so that was something I know my dad had seen in another community in North Carolina, because he and Frank Kessler traveled up and down the East Coast looking at different planned unit developments, because that wasn't really anything that had been done here. It was also thought that it probably wouldn't work here.
We should emphasize that. A lot of people thought that. They also thought that about Glenmore.
Yeah, they thought both wouldn't be attractive. So they had some real opposition when it first started. But bike trails. There's the tunnel under the road so that you didn't have to, that was something I know my dad was a big proponent of. He saw that in a community in North Carolina because at the time, again, my sisters and I were little or younger, and we would want to go to the pool and ride our bikes, and this way it kept us off the road. We could ride the bike trails and keep us not crossing the main entry at the time.
Kings Mill in Williamsburg also has the tunnel under the road.
Right, yeah. And then
to get to the pool.
There was a company, and I don't know if they still exist or not, East West Development, I believe, and they did a bunch of communities down in like the Raleigh, North Carolina area that I know Forest Lakes is similar to, as well as there's one in Richmond called Brander Mill that is similar to Forest Lakes, and actually I think Brander Mill might have undergone a like logo change, but their signage and stuff used to be very similar to Forest Lakes. Like it was the same fleur-de-lis and it looked very similar. I think their colors were blue and tan versus green and tan. But yeah, so I kind of grew up around that, and then Forest Lakes was growing, and so then Glenmore came on board, so my dad moved over to Glenmore and was the marketing director for Glenmore when Glenmore started, so kind of grew up around Glenmore as well. But yeah, if you go back, he was a big proponent of Earlysville Forest. When Earlysville Forest started, that's when he actually got into real estate, and then Mill Creek, and then he got out of, he was no longer at Glenmore and went and was worked for a local builder, and then was doing Dunlora, came into Dunlora and did Dunlora. And Dunlora, so when I got into real estate, he was the vice president of sales and marketing for one of the builders in town that was building primarily in Dunlora. So I was on the Dunlora sales team when I started. But going back to what Nikki said, I think that's having him be sort of my mentor when I started was huge.
Big time.
Huge for. And I would credit him for a lot of my success and a lot of the organizational and the tips that I am able to impart now on the new agents that I have working with me.
I am so excited for today's show.
Yeah.
I love the real estate and I love the history of Charlottesville. Suzanne Reel is watching Allied Property Management. She, in fact, is managing my rental at the Villas at Southern Ridge. So it's gone like full circle here.
Yeah.
Suzanne Reel, you are awesome. Allied Property Management. I cannot speak highly enough if you're looking for somebody as a property manager. We're going to weave all this in together. In a very approachable fashion. First, I'd like to work Nikki in and talk about the significance of Forest Lakes and Dunlora and Glenmore and Old Trail. She has ties, Amanda does, to all these. I mean, I would say Old Trail, and help me understand this, Forest Lakes, from a rooftop standpoint, is the largest community in Albemarle County.
I believe it is. If it's not, it's been surpassed by Old Trail, I would say, probably.
I think Forest Lakes is one. I think Old Trail.
I think it's still. I think Old Trail, because
it's
Old Trail is a close second. Old Trail hasn't finished.
Right.
Forest Lakes is relatively finished. They have They have a new section of townhomes that Ryan Holmes is building, and they are. But as the last I'd heard, they only had like one left. They don't have very many left. They're nearing completion of that section of Forest Lakes.
I've heard the same. So I think Forest Lakes, guys, Albemarle County, the largest rooftop neighborhood. Old Trail 2. Mm-hmm. I think Glenmore, with between 840 and 850 active rooftops, is 3. Mm-hmm. So you're talking the three largest Albemarle County neighborhoods she's got ties to here. From a development standpoint, from a sales standpoint. Can you speak, Nikki, to the significance of these neighborhoods and how they've influenced the community over time?
Well, I mean, can you imagine this community without them? What if that opposition had won, right? And then also, isn't there always opposition when people are bringing good ideas that eventually do benefit the community, right? Because truly, just take a second and think, what if those communities were never built here? What would Charlottesville look like? What did it look like? I mean, what did 29 North, that whole
there wasn't anything.
Exactly, there was nothing there. All those stoplights. Like, I had a whole conversation with someone a couple months ago where we were talking about which turn to make to get to my office, and they were like, oh yeah, that's like one after the first red light or something. And I was like, no, there are 2. And he's like, oh, and I realized we were talking about the same thing. He just hadn't been in the area in a while. because it's just constantly developing and grown up, and it's been an amazing, wonderful thing. So,
Great take.
Yeah.
Great take. Can you put in perspective the opposition you remember? I mean, that's the definition of NIMBYism.
I mean, I just remember, I just remembered, I was little, so it wasn't a huge topic of conversation. I mean, I remember the fun things like helping to name the neighborhoods and the street names, voting on having dinner conversations around street names.
That's awesome.
and floor plans.
Which are some of the streets you would help name?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I can't go. Well, so I live in the Cove Point, and I remember it was a bone of contention with the E on the end of the point. And the name of our street was Trace, and still the post office today still doesn't recognize it as Trace, but Trace is a name of a road in England, and it's still the post office calls it terrace. So it's funny when we're like, we live on Cove Trace. Yeah, so I remember those kind of conversations. I really remember floor plan names, and they always, they always had something to do with my dad. And so there was the Kent, which is a very popular floor plan. You'll find it in Dunlora, you'll find it in Forest Lakes, you'll find it in Western Ridge, all these neighborhoods, because the builder built it, was a very popular floor plan, was named after his first year dorm at UVA.
Old dorms.
Old dorms.
Yeah, I was down.
And then there was the Gunston, which was like his middle school, so then we had the Birds of Prey, and then we had the TV families, so it was like the Anderson and the Keaton, so from old school sitcoms. So we used to vote on those kind of things. But yeah, I remember, growing up, it was, we talked about it. He was always talking about he had this meeting or that meeting, or he was going here to look at this community, and yeah. So I mean, I think one of the things that's different now, and what Forest Lakes, Glenmore, Dunlora all have to offer that's different is the larger people were quarter of an acre lot. It was so small. It can be right on top of our neighbors. And, now you can go to new communities and they're 30-foot wide yards. These are huge.
How about Rivanna Village?
Right,
yes.
Right.
You want to talk about outside Glenmore?
Right.
I mean, you're talking 4,000 square foot homes, maybe 3,000 square foot homes on .08.
Right. And so
that's kind of the norm now. Because the dirt's so expensive. Because
the dirt's so expensive. The cul-de-sac idea, being able to go live on a cul-de-sac, and you don't really see neighborhoods so much with the cul-de-sac where kids can go out and play in the, my daughter was out playing in the cul-de-sac yesterday with a bunch of her friends, kicking around the soccer ball and that type of stuff, and you don't have to worry about the through traffic and that type of thing. So I think those kind of communities are the way that the development has been.
You guys, the feed is blowing up right now. I just want to let you know, the history piece really intrigues a lot of people. So Lee Alberson and Danny O'Day, we'll get to your comments on LinkedIn. We're live on 15 Facebook pages, 15 Twitter accounts, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, every social platform. Kevin Higgins, who we've dubbed the King of Greenwood, is watching. He routinely contributes to the show and makes us better. He said Frank Kessler started with the Cavalier Restaurant while he was at UVA. I think his third year at UVA. And he says his daughter, Candy, is the head pro at Old Trail, which we know.
Right.
Frank, a.k.a. Papa Bear, was drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates out of high school and took a UVA football scholarship instead. He also once owned the Virginian Restaurant. So we got a lot of history aficionados on the feed right here.
Right.
We're going to get to the comment. So we should talk more Kessler here. People are asking about them. How did he have the vision to start these projects, the influence to push them forward? There's a rock outside the Glenmore Country Club and this rock, Frank Kessler, for those that don't know, has passed away. Rest in power, Frank Kessler. And this rock outside the Glenmore Country Club says, and memory serves correct, he envisioned it, he built it, he enjoyed it, and he loved it. Something like that.
So as a teenager, I was a lifeguard. at the Forest Lakes pool. And I remember he would come and he would stand on the balcony at the Forest Lakes North Pool, and he had such a personality and such a presence.
Such a presence. Yeah.
And that's one of the cool things is that, because I had known him as a kid, so here I was.
Some people were almost scared of him.
Yeah, I mean, he could be a little intimidating.
Yeah.
But because of who my dad was and my dad's relationship with him, I don't know that I was necessarily intimidated by him, but he would come and he would kind of like lord over the pool and like check out, make sure we were all doing what we were supposed to be doing. So everybody was on their P's and Q's when he was around. But you could just see how much he loved what he was doing. And like now, it's cool when you think about, like the Timberwood Grill, for example, is such a neighborhood bar over there, a bar and restaurant over there. And you go in and you always see Forest Lakes residents in there. And it's such a cool, like, gathering place. And I think that's what he envisioned. It was a place for all types of people, all types of families, and a place for people to gather and have the social and the social interaction for adults, but also for for kids as well. So you would kind of be able to find a playmate and that type of thing. I think that's. And I think there's something to be said for that kind of a community, I mean, I don't know that I necessarily appreciated it when I was a teenager, but now as a parent with kids, like I love that my kids are able to go out and play in the cul-de-sac all day. I mean, my daughter was outside all day yesterday.
Well, and it's good for your sanity.
Right, and of course.
Well, for everybody,
of course.
Truly,
But,
like he envisioned something that really allowed people to live life well at a level that is very challenging to do outside of that type of structure or neighborhood.
Right.
I love my neighborhood, but my kids can't go walk to a pool.
Right.
It's not happening. I have to get in a car, or they have to get in a car, and I'm not sure which is worse.
This is a tough question here. Think about this, and I'm going to relay some comments first.
Okay.
Are they the first HOA neighborhoods in Albemarle County history? And before you give me that answer, I got to make a quick correction. So the viewers and listeners are really, really smart. Okay, and I made a mistake. Candy Comer is no longer at Old Trail. She's now at the old Waynesboro Country Club, now called Orchard Creek.
Right.
So thank you, Kevin, for that correction right there. You got to be on your P's and Q's here. You got so many viewers and listeners. Thank you, Kevin Higgins, on keeping me on point there. Are they the first HOA neighborhoods in Albemarle history?
I don't know. I do. That is something. Those are kind of memories I remember. So my dad initially, as the marketing director, had to be the president of the HOA.
Right.
When Forest Lake started. And I mean the complaints over the goose droppings on the bike trails, and then we had an issue with a beaver in the Hollymead Lake, and trying to solve some of those issues with homeowners were quite amusing at times. I don't know that he would necessarily characterize them as amusing, but in hindsight, they're amusing.
Yeah, right.
But the complaints that you had when you had an HOA, but I don't know the answer whether it was the first HOA or not.
Vanessa Parkhill says Earlysville Forest has an HOA.
And he was the marketing, he and Charlie Armstrong did Earlysville Forest. That was when he first started in real estate. He was a teacher in Madison, and Steve Runkle.
Not the Charlie Armstrong from Southern?
No, it's Charlie Armstrong from real estate. He was the principal out at Western Albemarle High School.
Okay, thank you. Because the Charlie Armstrong at Southern now is like
is
our
young,
age.
yeah, he's young.
Okay.
No,
okay.
This is
Any
older
kin
Charlie.
to that Charlie?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
No.
Thank you, Vanessa Parkhill, for that. You got to be on point here. She says Earlysville Forest as an HOA. Let's talk about Nikki. Let's get in the mix here.
Yes.
Now we talk Albemarle County and real estate, and Old Trail and Forest Lakes and Dunlora and Glenmore. They go hand in hand with some of the most popular neighborhoods and some of the largest transaction base in the municipality. Talk to us about that.
When there's inventory, they certainly do. And like right now, there are 4 active listings within Forest Lakes, and I'm looking in both sections, right? So There are 4, and there's one coming soon, and that is it. And I can guarantee you there are way more than 5 people jumping after getting in that neighborhood. Katie Pearl last week was talking about a lot of her clients who are military related. One of the neighborhoods that they try to go to on a regular basis is Forest Lakes. And I can only imagine that a lot of it is because of exactly what Amanda grew up with and is now experiencing with her own family, right? So it's definitely an interesting thing.
It is interesting.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I had buyers that were interested in a listing last weekend, not this past weekend, the weekend before, in Forest Lakes, and I called on day 0 to make an appointment, and the soonest we could get in was Saturday morning. On Friday, I got a text that they had received 2 offers that were too good to refuse, and they were canceling showings for the rest of the weekend.
That's bananas.
And that is happening regularly.
And that
is the case.
Bananas.
And you wouldn't even think they would entertain the other offers to see if the other ones would be better?
Sometimes.
Well, I mean, I think sometimes, it's.
Are they time-stamped offers?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I just know that I got the text that it was. I mean, but I think that's unfortunately a sign of the times. Is just the sheer number of people that are out there looking and not being able to find what they want.
Can I ask you about that? Are you seeing, because you're a team leader, okay?
Yes,
so
I
you're
am.
talking about a ton of agents here.
I do.
Are we seeing time-stamped offers now?
So yes, we definitely are, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, because what's happening is sometimes when the consumer out there is trying to buy a home and they maybe are not as well as knowledgeable in our area and in our market as would be helpful to actually compete, sometimes they're doing this time-stamped offer trying to push something, but their offer is actually not solid enough to compete, right? So when you have the consumer who has that trusted local, advocate there for them, that makes a huge difference. And sometimes when the client wants to push that and have that deadline, and if their offer is strong enough, it really is enough to make the difference.
The timestamp offer, I learned from you guys. You guys are the pros here. I love real estate. The timestamp offer does not turn off the seller.
It depends.
The high pressure tactic.
It depends. I mean, I think it depends on what the offer is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when you're dealing with cash.
All cash above
all
ask, maybe
cash
not.
And all cash and clean. I think the big thing with the way that the timestamp works too, though, is and that it can work against you as well, in that it becomes a null and void contract if they don't accept by that acceptance time.
Right.
Your offer is now dead.
And so that offer is now dead. It's a strategy, I think, that buyers can use, but at the same time, is it the best strategy? It's hard to determine, dependent, because it really depends on what the buyer's qualifications are. If they have financing.
Well, and it depends too, because just because financing is on the table, yes, cash is king, but not really, not always.
Not all.
Because if you've got a substantial down payment, and yes, you're financing some of it, because honestly, money is cheap. It might even be a smart thing to finance it, even if you could bring cash to the table, right? It just depends on your situation and how you're running your monies, right? So if you're financing versus cash, it's not always a win-win there. Yes, cash is definitely powerful. And if you're financing, you need to be able to make your offer strong. Also, if you don't have that timestamp and you're also one of the first offers and you're very competitive, then when someone has that time-stamped offer, what are they going to see? Are they going to feel the push? Because I'm thinking maybe not so much. If they can see, oh, this one's time-stamped, but this one's just as good and it's not. So, okay, maybe I should just wait and follow the plan that I had set with my realtor, in which to be able to really get this out there, market the property, see what happens, right?
Get more people through. I mean, I think the big thing is, as a seller, is you want to sell it for the highest price and the quickest amount of time. I think that's typically the goal. But sometimes it's, you want to get bodies through too, and give more people an opportunity. And how that translates when you have a timestamp, and you're not allowing more people, who knows what you've left on the table, like if you had kept it open for the whole weekend, type of thing. But who knows? But I mean, it's a hard game. It's a hard game for both realtors, and it's hard. We've never been in this kind of market before, and I've experienced quite a few different real estate markets.
Yes, you have.
You've seen a ton of markets.
I've seen a ton of markets.
Yeah.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen before. I mean,
Do you like it?
Not particularly.
No realtors like this market.
Not particularly.
Yeah.
Well, it's really hard it's hard when you're working with a buyer and they are looking for move up potential, but they need to sell their home, and you have to figure out. You have to be really creative in every scenario. And so if they want to buy, they're ready, willing, and maybe not able because they have a house to sell, but the fear of being homeless is high. And then there's the other thing is there's a lot of new construction, but a lot of the new construction is into 2023. And most people I've ever talked to don't want to move twice.
Right.
So
moving's the worst.
Moving's the worst,
Yeah.
and so that they're looking at how can I from a strategy standpoint, how can I sell my house and move into something new and do it all fluidly, where it's just one move. So I think that it's hard, and it's hard on realtors. I think from the standpoint of we're having to be very creative in figuring out what's the best strategy, and I think too, and Nikki and I were talking about this a little bit before the show. I think from a seller standpoint too, or from a realtor standpoint for sellers, is it's really easy to get caught up in it's easy to sell a house, or it can seem easy to sell a house. The new thing with the house goes live on Friday and we'll review offers on Monday.
So Katie Pearl's watching. You have 5 firms on the feed right now. The fabulous Katie Pearl's watching the program. So many listings now go live on Thursday, and in the agent notes, the expectation is set that offers will be reviewed by Monday.
Right.
Greg Slater of Nest sat in that chair on Wednesday, and he said how this market is running, it's almost like agents now have no weekends whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like our weekends are shot and gone.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think, and it's tough. It's tough, and it's tough from the standpoint of it's easy. When I first started in real estate, I was on like I said earlier, I was on the Dunlora sales team, and it was, if you wanted to live in Dunlora, you came in, these were the prices of the home. There wasn't really a whole lot of negotiation in that. It was like, this is the price of the home, and if you don't like it, the next person will come in and buy it at that price type of thing. But what there was inventory.
Right.
So there were other things.
So there were options.
There were other things to choose from.
Yeah.
The thing that we have now is, it's like, if you don't want to pay this price.
Well, and I think when it comes to realtors and whether or not they have a weekend or not, a lot of this has to do with how they manage their buyers.
Right.
First of all, if you're a realtor and all you work with is buyers, bless your heart, truly. Like, I would highly recommend you go out and you get you some listings. And I know that's hard and that's competitive, but when you're bringing value, it's there. The business is there, right? But also, you've got to, that whole ready, willing, and able, right? Willing means a whole nother thing right now. So instead of going out and trying out houses by showing houses to buyers, there are a lot of conversations that need to be had before you ever step foot in a house. And it's more important than it's ever been, right? They've always taught, hey, you should talk to your buyers a lot before you first step foot in the house. But right now, with the price of gas, with the ability to get into a house to show it at all, you should not be stepping into that house unless you have a truly serious buyer who you've had an in-depth conversation about what being willing to buy means. This means you are ready to compete, because what was happening even last year, where you could go through 4 or 5 offers that were not accepted, and then, okay, now I've learned what I need to learn, and now I'm ready to buy. I didn't know what it meant through house 1 to 4, and the offers improved, but by that 5th, 6th one, they were like, oh, okay, I got it. I finally understand. We've got to skip those first 3 or 4 now. You can't go through that. There's not enough inventory to have that learning curve, right?
Great take.
Yeah.
It is a
Good
great
stuff. Good stuff. Neil Williamson, President, Free Enterprise Forum. Good take, Nikki. He says this: Forest Lakes and Old Trail utilized a tapestry of price points, products, and a medium scale retail to get buyers. Glenmore, not so much. Why don't you speak a little bit to that, of how Forest Lakes and Old Trail had a variety of, say, townhomes, the smaller single-family detached, all the way to the 4,000, 5,000 up. Glenmore, I think you identified earlier in the show, what did you call it, the trade-up neighborhood?
It was the move up. I mean,
Move
I
up
think that
neighborhood?
the idea, I think, in from Frank's perspective and even my dad's perspective when it first started, was it was the place you went after Forest Lakes. It was your move up from Forest Lakes. You went from Forest Lakes to Glenmore when your kids got to be a certain age and you could play golf during the day. Was kind of the idea, I think. But I think having different price points in a neighborhood was key to the success of both of them. I think Old Trail, I think with the desirability and being for a while being one of the only places you could get new construction, the prices and the dirt has gotten that much more expensive. So therefore, the houses have gotten more expensive,
and the costs of goods are more expensive.
Everything's more expensive.
Yes.
That you don't see as big of the differences between the different sections of Old Trail. I mean, there's $500,000 townhomes.
Yeah. Right.
Whereas when Forest Lake started, it was like it was definitely characterized by different price points. So it was like you had the entry level single family detached, and they were under or right around 100,000, and then you had the bigger lots with a little bit bigger houses that were in the mid to upper just under 2, and then when it kind of went up from there, and then you had the largest homes. But again, at the time in Forest Lakes, when Forest Lakes first started, the largest neighborhood, the largest houses were still under 5.
Under 500K?
Oh yeah, they were like 400,000. When I first started in real estate, if I sold a $350,000 house, I thought I was stoked.
Right.
I never thought I would ever see home sales that were over $500,000. That was luxury market when I started.
I'm looking at a proposed detached on the MLS right now in Old Trail. $950,000 asking price. This will sell all day, every day. $355 price per square foot. Folks, it's 0.11 acres.
Yeah.
We're talking 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath, and 2,700 square feet at $950K asking. I mean, what do you this is just the market? This is the market?
The big thing is and I explain this to my agents on my team, to anybody that's not familiar with Charlottesville, buyers and sellers alike. I mean, I think one of the things is the dirt is so expensive,
right.
And you have to when you look at how expensive it is for the dirt, just the dirt, and take away the improvement of the house, you can see, there used to be kind of an old standby ratios of, you wanted your lot to be 25% of your total value. I think that's with new construction, it's a higher amount. But when you look at that, I mean, if you have a $100,000 lot, you need to have a $400,000, you're looking at a higher price point. It's just, that's the way it goes. And it's, so it makes it that much more unaffordable,
So the comments are blowing up here. What I'm going to try to do is, you guys are killing it, literally killing it. Lee Elberson and Danny O'Day, I'm getting to you here on LinkedIn. I found this fascinating from Daniel McDougall, who's watching on one of 15 Facebook pages. We've dubbed him DMAC. DMAC says this, and thank you for participating, Daniel McDougall. When I first came to Charlottesville, I moved into Forest Lakes, lived in Cove Trace with the Spagonis at the other end of the cul-de-sac, then on to Dunlora for 7 years, and finally over to Glenmore with Rick Spagoni as my listing agent on the house we purchased. Interesting side note, I did Amanda's mortgage on her first home.
He
Great
did.
client. Dude, there's no...
He did.
There's...
Well... It happens when you've been in real estate for a long time, lived at Charlottesville. Well, is a small can be a really small town.
Dude,
yeah, it's a big small town.
The longer I'm here, I'm like, there's no freaking secrets in this town.
No.
I went to the park with my wife and kid yesterday, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's like 25 people here that I know at the park, and I hadn't showered or shaved or anything, and I was wearing a hat and sunglasses, and I was hoping to be incognito, and it was not happening.
Right.
It's like everyone's 1 degree apart in this town.
Right, and we were talking earlier, one of the other big partners with the development of Forest Lakes and Dunlora, Steve Runkle, his daughter Lori Meistrel is a realtor with Nest. And to make that even more convoluted, I grew up with Lori as Lori was my cousin because Lori's dad was married to my mom's sister. So it's a small town. And then you have Jeff Gaffney over at Real Estate 3, who is Frank's son-in-law. So it's a small town. It's a small real estate town, small town. And when you've been here a really long time, there's the sort of the 1 degree of separation.
Yeah, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, forget about that. It's 1 degree of Frank Kessler here in Central Virginia. All right, so these comments are coming in. It's coming in fast and furious here, so I'm going to try to identify as many as possible, okay?
Sure, let's go.
So this is on LinkedIn, and multiple people are asking this. Lee Elberson is asking this on LinkedIn. Kevin Yancey, the king of Waynesboro, is watching this in Waynesboro, and he's asking this question. And Kevin Higgins is asking this. Stephen Kraling is asking this on Twitter, and the comment is also coming in on LinkedIn. The R word. And the R word's obviously recession. And then the second phrase that's being bannered around by these folks is bubble. Okay? I have said so many times on this program that this is not a real estate bubble here because of the regulatory nature that's in place for loans and financing, and because folks have a hell of a lot more equity in their homes here. They're not leveraging their homes like piggy banks, pulling HELOCs on their houses because they're just expecting appreciation. Folks are much more savvy because of the last crash. There's much more regulation in place for that, and because the insulatory protection of the University of Virginia, hiring more people and enrolling more students than ever before. You guys are the pros, however. All these folks are asking bubble and whether these prices are sustainable. Specifically, the Old Trail listing I just mentioned, $950K asking for 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath, less than 2,700 square feet on 0.11.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a little sticker shock there. We can appreciate that, right?
Yes.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
yeah.
And I think a lot of people feel sticker shy. I think they feel like sometimes moving to Charlottesville, it's going to be, it
cheap.
Should be cheap.
Yeah, they're like, my wife used to say this, lower, slower, when she was coming from like Manhattan and Long Island. I'm like, not necessarily here in Charlottesville.
We still get that mentality on a regular basis, especially people coming from like the Northeast. They think moving to Central Virginia that we're a less expensive area, and we are not. And our market sustains that. And the idea of a bubble, like we're just not seeing anything that backs that, right? I hear people talking about it. I hear people who believe with all their hearts and minds and souls that that's a thing. But when you look at the facts, they just don't add up. When you look at our economy, when you look at where we're going, where we've been, there's just nothing that indicates that that's a thing, right? Could something really bad in the world happen and it impact our real estate economics to shift that? Absolutely. That could happen at any point, any time, right? So, and we're already seeing, like we're seeing gas prices increase, and that is due to worldwide events that we have no control over whatsoever. And will that impact our day-to-day lives? Absolutely. Is it going to cause us to have any sort of a bubble pop? No, because the bubble's not there.
I mean, as somebody who was around when with the housing crisis in 2008, you felt it a little. It was a. I was on the villas at Southern Ridge. It was a
phase one.
Phase one.
Okay, I got phase one. Built-in appreciation, 5K appreciation over 5 phases.
Right.
Phase one right here. Okay. You know what I'm talking about.
I do. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I mean, I think when there was such success with Hessian Hills when Hessian Hills converted to condos, and that was supposed to be like a 3-year project, and I think it sold out in like 18 months.
Was that Hunter?
I don't know if it was Hunter, but I know Greg Slater was part of the sales team for that. And it went so fast, and so then there were other communities that sort of jumped on board. I think Hunter Craig was Barracks West.
Okay.
Anyway, but one of the things that I remember about it is you felt it, because it was very quickly into the villas at Southern Ridge, we started seeing the financing starting to go. Now, condo financing
is difficult
anyway, and it is based primarily on
non-warrantable.
Well, warrantable, non-warrantable, but it's also based primarily on it's not so localized. It's more of what's the national scope of condos and financing.
And I can jump in here. As many of you know that watch the program, I got a rental of the Villas Southern Ridge. I bought in phase 1. I met her fabulous family there. Mustache Dan Pettit, who's watching the program.
was on the sales team.
Yeah, we've dubbed him Mustache Dan Pettit. He watches the program all the time. I love Dan Pettit.
I do too.
Bart Fry, a Virginia Beach developer, Fry Properties.
Yes.
I bought in 2008. I think the price point was roughly $182, something like that. And it's just now surpassed that threshold of 182, because you couldn't have purchased at a worse time than when I bought at the Villas of Southern Ridge in phase 1.
Yeah.
And I had to jump through a lot of hoops from a financing standpoint because it was a condo, and the developer, Bart Fry, realized the writing on the wall and said, geez Louise, and I was going to use a different phrase, but this is a family show. And he said, I'm going to pivot my model and rent them instead of selling them. Mm-hmm. Now, the crappy part for owners, and I love you, Bart Fry. I got no beef with you, Bart Fry. The crappy part with the owners is when a developer owns such a lion's share of the development, he controls the association, so then refinancing becomes incredibly difficult for those properties and people who got in phase 1. Now, the positive side about this is there's such little housing inventory that I've been able to rent it the entire time, well over mortgage price point, and have been able to pay it off as a result. And continue to hold it. And Suzanne is now, so crazy, this freaking world here. Suzanne is now managing an Allied Property Management. So I guess what I'm getting at is like, I saw, and I'm going to throw it back to you, Amanda. I love that you're on this program, Amanda. I saw that, like, literally at the villas, I'm like, dude, this is a little sketch here. I'm seeing more tenants coming in here than owners. Then you're starting to see maybe like the qualities, the taking care deteriorate a little more. You know where I'm going with this? I mean, anywhere you want to go on this, jump in here.
Well, I was going to go back more to seeing the writing on the wall for the recession housing bubble. I think the condos, it became hard, so they reverted back to rentals. But I think from the entry level of the price point was so good. Like, that was why they were so desirable. And then I was also at the same time on
That's all I could afford.
Yeah. I mean, it was all my sister that
she was my neighbor.
Laura.
Her sister was my neighbor.
Could afford. And then at the same time being on the sales team out at Old Trail, then we started seeing builders pull it, not building the spec homes that they had been building in previous years. And so from the standpoint of, this feels different to me than the housing crisis. And I think the biggest factors are, the financing factors, is that they've put so many regulations in place that it used to be that you could do the stated income loans where you told them how much you made and then you could qualify for a loan. And so people getting in over their heads isn't as, you don't hear about that as much anymore because there's so many regulations in place to prevent that from happening. Plus, I think, Charlottesville's always been a desirable place to live. So people come here and they think, back to what Nikki was saying, they come here, they think it's going to be cheap, but then, you look at the desirability with the University of Virginia, but I also think we have some tech companies here, we have some other big company, I think the University of Virginia is always the top employer in the area. I mean, they're one of the top employers in the state, but you add in, but you add in some of the other companies that are based here. It's not S&L Financial anymore, but I can't remember what
S&P.
S&P.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You have CFA Institute. You had, at one point we had GE. We had a State Farm. So we had people moving here and moving out of here. on a regular basis, and I think we still, to a degree, have that. So
We do,
so I think people want to live here. They want to, we've top retirement lists. So your best place to retire, happy.
All of them.
All
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said for the area, and it's just it's an unfortunate thing when you come here and the teachers can't live in Albemarle County,
Or the
Exactly.
cops, or the nurses,
the
yeah.
the
cops,
firefighters.
right? Have to live outside of the area because the prices are so high. But it does go to the desirability of the area.
Well, and it's not like we're saying, because we're not, that this is a good thing. I mean, you
No,
asked
no.
Amanda earlier, do you like this market? And the answer was no. And I don't know any realtors who are going to say yes to that. We don't. And part of why we don't like it is because it's really hard to best serve our clients and help them get what they want and help them reach their goals and achieve what they're trying to do in life in a market like this. A couple weeks ago, we were talking with Quentin Beckham. And one of the things we talked about was not a bubble, and this is not a healthy market. It is not. We know this, and we are just trying to figure out how to best help the people who can compete in this market to do those, and those who can't, what can they do? How can they get there, right? How can they ride this out until they're at a point where they can be there?
Right.
Because truly, being able to lock in and have a more fixed expense with your housing is one of the best things you can do to stabilize your life.
Great take, ladies. Tara Savage watching the program. She's got a take here. Danny O'Day, your comment is on deck. He wants to talk upzoning.
Okay.
I put on, did you see the listings?
I did.
On Shamrock Road?
I
It went
did.
viral here. So he wants to mention that. In fact, a lot of people want to talk about those. First, let's get to Tara Savage here. There were literally thousands of condos that came on the market back then with condo conversions, and I could not understand as a realtor how anyone thought they were a good idea. The supply was so high that the laws of economics did not work. I watched many realtors invest in them because of the price points, but the sheer number of condos being sold at one time just never made sense to me as an investment. That's Tara Savage's take. Tara, we love when you watch the program and offer your perspective. Let's talk about the upzoning. The reference, Danny O'Day, this is your comment on LinkedIn, and Kevin Higgins is bringing this up. In fact, it's on like 6 different social channels here, this topic. The reference was in regards to, and I'm going to use broad strokes here, properties that need TLC, we'll leave it at TLC, that are in the city of Charlottesville, and they have zoning potential, and the property in its current structure may be not the future of the property long term. It could be either a remodel and a build up, or a tear down and build again. And a good example was the 2 on Shamrock that were next to each other. You're talking 800 square feet for one with an asking price of basically $800K for the sake of conversation, that had multiple offer scenario and went under contract in essentially 2 weeks. Both of them did. We're talking $1.6 million in totality asking. I don't want to anticipate or assume what the closing or the pending price is, but I would imagine when the turnaround time is that narrow, it's pretty damn close, especially considering what we know about the market and its dynamics.
Yeah.
What do you, Amanda, start with you, what do you make of upzoning in the city and all that jazz?
Well, I mean, one of the things, I think you had this in your post, is the city of Charlottesville's 10.2 square miles. There is a finite amount of dirt in the city of Charlottesville, as it were. And so, I mean, I think, we talked about it a little bit before. I think the dirt's expensive, and so there's, unfortunately, it's not something. It's pricing people out of living in the city of Charlottesville, who perhaps need to live in the city of Charlottesville for purposes of the public transportation, or walkability, or it's a family home and they've owned it for a long time, and real estate is the first step to generational, can be the first step to generational wealth, and if you're driving the prices up and so that things are unaffordable or unsustainable, I think that for some of these working class families, it's going to be hard, and they're going to be lose their homes, and that's a sad state of affairs when we can't have workers who've lived in Charlottesville or people who've lived in Charlottesville for a long period of time and now have to move out because the prices are so high, and I know that there's the 10-cent tax increase in the city of Charlottesville, and I think you raise the taxes, it's all cyclical. I mean, real estate always has been cyclical, but I think that's just a state of, unfortunately, because of the finite amount of dirt, you're going to see upzoning, and you're going to see prices continue to rise again, affordability, or desirability, actually, desirability of wanting to live in Charlottesville and be close to downtown, be within walking distance. I mean, I think that there's something to be said for the people who want to, be able to walk to work, or walk to, a restaurant, or walk to the neighborhood bar, walk to the neighborhood park.
Scott Stadium.
Yeah. And those are, it's just going to continue to drive up the prices. And I think upzoning is going to be, so there's investors coming in who are like, let's take advantage of that.
Okay, so let me ask this specifically to you guys. This is from Danny O'Day. Danny, I'm going to read your comment specifically from LinkedIn. I'm curious to hear Amanda and Nikki's thoughts as to what extent outside speculative investment is driving up the cost of housing locally, if they think it's getting to the point of outpacing local average income in terms of straight cost of affordability. So, and let me add to that, not only outside investors, but how about folks that are working remotely? We're now a Zoom town, that are selling a townhome in Nova. Folks across the street, I bring this up all the time. They sold a townhome in Nova that was like 1,300 square feet. Mm-hmm. Now, it was a Tony part of Nova. Mm-hmm. They got almost $1.5 million. Mm-hmm. Came down here, got essentially a 5,000 square foot home between 8 and 9, dumped a couple hundred into it, and still walked away with a hell of a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And now they're working remotely in the basement through an ISP, and have the same employer in Northern Virginia with those salaries. Mm-hmm. So how about outside speculation, investment from outside the area, plus the Zoom town phenomenon that's happening?
Well, so I think that we are an area who, on a regular basis, has that investor aspect impact us, and has for a long time. Amanda, is that what you've seen as well?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think you always, with the University of Virginia, because you have the parents who rather than pay rent for the 4 years, 5 years that their kid is at UVA, why don't I buy something and let them live there? And so you have that speculative. You have the people alumni who've graduated, who want a place to stay for the weekend when they come for for football games or basketball games, or baseball or whatever. I think So yes, I think there is we're going to continue to have that problem. I think the outside investor.
But it's not a new thing.
But it's not new
already, right?
It's not new, and I don't think it's going to go away. Mm-hmm. I think being the Zoom town deal, I do think that offer. When COVID happened, I mean, we have a lot to offer with where we're located. I mean, we're close to the mountains, we're close to the beach. We're not a far drive from a lot of stuff.
But the other side of that is a lot of our people who work in our area, whether it's the city or Albemarle County, now are also moving to some less expensive areas and zooming in, or even driving in once every couple of weeks. I had 2 clients last year that was the case. One moved to Richmond and one moved to Waynesboro. And talking about that whole average income, I don't know what the average income is, but if you look at 2019 stats, our median income for our area for an individual is $31,307. And I can tell you that someone having that income as their sole income is not going to be able to find a house in this market, and honestly would have had a hard time finding it before now.
For a long time.
That we have a gap in our local economy and society, where the people who make this town operate and run at a high level, doing the jobs that sometimes people don't necessarily want to do even, or doing jobs that they love but they don't make enough money at to be able to live here. And that's where that whole conversation about fair housing comes into play, right? And being able to upzone and also balance that with some income-based housing. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's still enough of that conversation happening. Frank and your dad going around the East Coast and finding examples of what worked. That's a thing that while it was opposed, it worked, and it worked wonderfully.
Do you think so here's an example. 70% of folks who work for the city of Charlottesville cannot afford to live in the city of Charlottesville. I mean, that's a microcosm of what we're talking about. Do you think when your dad and the late, great Frank Kessler were developing neighborhoods, it was easier to develop than it is now?
I don't. No, I don't.
Same difficulty from local government.
There was a lot of difficulty.
From local government?
From local government.
Okay.
It was hard. It was not as hard as it is now. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say that, because I think, one of the things that's stunning is I was talking to a builder the other day, and they were saying it's like 2 to 3 months to get a building permit. That did not used to be the case.
That's bananas.
Yeah.
That's bananas.
Yeah.
That it takes 2 to 3 months to get a building kit, and that's before any revisions.
Right. And
That's just submitting
that's just the
it.
I learned this,
Yeah.
that, and this is just a scary stat that we're about to relay. You take a $400,000 home in Albemarle County, and frankly, $400,000 homes in Albemarle County are starting to be very rare.
Yeah.
But let's just use, for the sake of conversation, a $400,000 home in Albemarle County. 24% of that $400,000 asking price is associated with government red tape and paperwork, and not cost of goods.
Right.
That's freaking terrifying.
It's yes.
That drives up pricing.
That drives up pricing, and I mean, I think one of the other things too is that was different between like Forest Lakes and Dunlora and Glenmore even, is there were a bunch of builders. There were a bit more local builders that were production builders that built 100 homes a year, 80 to 100 homes a year, that were building the homes in those neighborhoods. There weren't the big outside national regional builders that there are now in the market. And I think so it's changed. The landscape of development and building neighborhoods has changed dramatically from back before the housing crisis. I think the housing crisis had a huge impact on the local community from the new construction and development standpoint of how things got through. But I think the biggest thing is there weren't there. Dirt's going to continue to go up in price, so it's going to continue to be expensive. And if there continues to be the regulatory issues, it's going to make it that much more expensive, because somebody, unfortunately, it's not an easy fix, because there's, if the regulators make it harder for the developer to develop, and then the builders buy the lots. And at some point, that price, those costs have to be passed on. And so, who ends up with the ultimate cost is the consumer, who So it's hard to explain, and it's hard to explain it sometimes to buyers, and particularly from people from out of the area. That look, you have to widen this road to meet this regulatory body, and then they want the high density, in this to keep contain the growth, and you have to have the sidewalk here because it meets this regulatory body, and by the time you push that, the lots are teeny tiny, and the only thing to do is to go up and down. And I mean, I've had to have that conversation several times, or many times over the years, is that it definitely costs more to go out than it does to go up and down. That's why you're going to see a lot of the townhomes and the high densities, because it's a lot more cost effective for a builder to build a townhome than it is to build a
single family
detached. For
so
sure.
This has come in for both you guys. Kevin, you're making the program better here. And we're going to try to get to as many of these comments as possible, guys. There's a hell of a lot of comments right here. And we're already at 11:30. Time is flying. I just looked at the clock here. You're doing a great job. Seriously. Will Charlottesville be vertical grow? Will Charlottesville be a vertical growth city 20 years from now? Please ask Amanda and Nikki that. And the comparison is made to Boston, apartment buildings, condos going vertical to take advantage of airspace as opposed to limited land space.
My quick answer
Where's
to that
the
is
crystal ball?
probably not.
Why do you say probably not?
Because there's regulatory bodies that are going to prevent that from happening. I mean, it used to be that you couldn't get a building over 6 feet because you couldn't block the view of the mountain. 6 floors,
Yeah.
because you couldn't block the view of the mountains. Like they wanted to. So we're never. I don't foresee us ever being a high rise community where it's going to be just because. I mean, the regulatory body of, like, particularly Albemarle County, I mean, people ask all the time about, the different restaurants and that type of thing, and part of the reason they can't get through is because of the signage and the issues with the regulatory bodies of the area. So I don't foresee us
chairs with cloth chessboards,
right,
or checkerboards coming anytime
right.
soon, right?
Yeah,
right.
So, So I don't foresee us ever becoming a high rise.
Well, and so what do you think, though? I don't know. I agree. Like I tend to be a person with a really vivid imagination, and I have a hard time seeing that version happen. But I do think we're going to get taller than we are now, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I think we're going to find some sort of a balance where the people who are trying to make that not happen right now are not going to be happy. But I think we're going to find a balance there that the city and the area will be happy with long term and live with. Kind of like they didn't really want those PUDs coming in. And now they're there, and truly, I cannot imagine not having Forest Lakes. It's just mind-blowing to try. So I think we'll have to find a balance. Growth has to happen, right?
I mean, you would think. Neil Williamson is sharing a link in the comment section of my Facebook page, personal. For what it's worth, today, Albemarle County Community Development launched a new application portal called Camino to help remedy their unacceptable building permit delays. He also shared a link to Free Enterprise Forum, and we love the Free Enterprise Forum, and we encourage everyone to Google Free Enterprise Forum Charlottesville, and you'll see a fantastic website that we literally read constantly to prepare for these talk shows. And the headline is, Who's the Boss? Albemarle County Fire and Rescue Department versus VDOT and the Neighborhood Model. Just explaining how neighborhoods are developed. Neil Williamson, Free Enterprise Forum.
Yeah.
Ray Cadell watching the program. Vanessa Parkhill, I'm going to get to your comments. We'll go rapid fire here. We're all sports fans here. So maybe we'll go to a little PTI or Around the Horn or Sports Center rapid fire to try to get to as many comments as possible. Sure. Ray Cadell has said multiple times on the show in the comment section, not everyone is meant to be a homeowner. Thoughts on that topic?
Well, I mean,
he's watching right now.
I get it, and I struggle with that comment. Like, truly, I agree to some level, and I think I feel like I understand where he's coming from in that. Sometimes I hear it in context outside of the way that Ray is meaning it, right? And sometimes I feel like sometimes when people say it in different forums, they're saying it because they want to limit people. And I think he's meaning it more if truly just not everybody is. Some people aren't living a life where they want to be responsible for the house and the mortgage and all the things, even with the benefit. I have close friends who would much rather rent, and if they were going to buy, they wouldn't do it to be a homeowner.
I think he's speaking specifically financially here.
And financially, yeah. Absolutely. And it's not that they weren't meant to be or shouldn't be, it's that they can't be.
Well, and I think to a degree, I agree. Like, I think that there are some people that aren't going to be homeowners in their lifetime, and for whatever their reasoning may be. But I mean, it goes to housing affordability here in this area. I mean, the rents are just as expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of places.
Southern Ridge is $1,850 a month.
There are a lot of places.
$1,850.
Yeah, that's more than a mortgage payment.
More than a mortgage payment.
In some places, so
the mortgage payment on that, if you buy for $185 at 4%, is probably in the neighborhood of like $1,050. Plus the HOAs at like $160, $200. You just call it all in $1,250, and you're talking $1,850 rents, $600 cash flow positive day one. Think about that.
Yeah, it's
bananas.
It's bananas,
right?
and I think that's so. While on some level I agree that not everybody's meant to be a homeowner. What's sad is when it's preventing people who want to be a homeowner from being a homeowner, and particularly having to up their commute because that's where they can qualify for the $1,850 mortgage payment, and and then with inflation and the rising costs of gas and that type of stuff, now they're paying that much more to do that commute because they wanted to be a homeowner. So I don't think that there is anything that's going to solve it there's no overnight solving the issues as it relates to housing affordability or people being able to buy, everybody being able to buy a home.
Agreed, big time. The challenge is if we don't come up with some sort of a solid plan that starts now for that longer term, then we're going to keep having this conversation over and over again.
Right.
Of there's no short-term solution. Right?
Right.
And that's the thing that I think there are a lot of people in our area who want to make a difference, and many who are working to make a difference, small
sure.
pieces here and there, and that's amazing. And also, what can be done for the bigger picture? And I don't know. Maybe that's the next area of my life where I need to get more involved and be part of change, right? Because that's what we do. We see a challenge that we're passionate about, and then we decide I'm going to be part of the change.
So this is a good one so Ray has a follow-up here. He says, make sure this is mentioned on the show. Did you guys see this from a local agent on Facebook? And he's going to relay what the local agent put on Facebook. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
He says, this is the local agent talking, not Ray. I put an offer in on a Charlottesville house for some clients. I wasn't very emotionally invested, and neither were they. I had explained that our market would be crazy in the spring, and if they were not in a hurry, they should wait until the fall. They agreed, but then saw this house and wanted to make an offer. This is the result. $100,000 over asking price. This house was tax assessed at $284,700. Total square footage, including the garage, was 2,188 total square feet. The yard was only 0.25 acres. The list price was $400K. I love making money as much as the next person. I wonder what these sales will do to the tax rates and how this will affect others in the neighborhood. What about the elderly who are barely making it now? Taxable values will go up, causing people to have to pay more in taxes. By the way, thanks to this listing agent who was good enough to send this message to us. I really appreciate that. A, she didn't make us wait all day, and B, she sent a very informational response. I just can't say thank you enough. You know who you are. My seller truly appreciated the 20 offers. Unfortunately, your offer was not the winner. A few facts: 16 out of 20 were over asking. 19 had escalation clauses. The final escalated $100,000 over asking. 5 were cash. 6 had no inspections. 3 with loans had appraisal gap clauses. I don't have any solutions. I just find this very scary.
Well, first of all, kudos to that listing agent, because that is one of the challenges. People are getting a little busy, let's just say, and maybe are not being as stellar in that area as would be appreciated. So huge kudos to that listing agent for staying on top of their staff and giving that time and appreciation, because that should be done. And that agent is completely right. That is definitely going to impact that neighborhood and those families in there who bought at a lower price where they stabilized their income. They're not completely stabilizing it, though, because of taxes.
And that's one of the reasons I highlighted the Shamrock Road ones. I know for a fact, because after we hosted the realtor owner of the show for these properties, we then heard through direct messages from 4 families on Shamrock that had lived on Shamrock for decades that were said, look, we're just trying to keep our home. And if these homes trade for these price points, then our assessments and our taxes are going to go up, and we're retired. So they're basically mentioning we have fixed income here to buy groceries, et cetera, to live.
Which are also more expensive
More
than
expensive,
they've ever been.
gas, more expensive than ever before.
Yes.
They're like, this sales price will impact how much we pay to city because assessments are done on comps. So I was empathetic to their plight.
For sure. I'm empathetic to their plight. I think again, I think that there's not an overnight solution, and we can't control. We as agents, we as realtors, can't control who the buyer is for a piece of property. So, we can't control that there were 16 offers on that property, that it went for $100,000. We can advise, but if there is a buyer that is willing to pay over $100,000 more, then and it's cash and there's no inspections, and the seller has some place to go, not knowing all of the details, we can't control we can't control that.
Well, and it's is it the fiduciary responsibility?
Right.
Yes.
You have to do this legally.
Right.
Yeah.
It's our job.
Yeah, it's your job.
And we are bound by the code of ethics,
Right.
and that we have to do. We have to represent our clients to the best of our abilities, and
not even to the best of our
not
abilities.
even to
Because
the
if
best of
our
our
abilities aren't enough, then we're
right.
not doing our duty.
Right.
Right. It's
But
to be in their best interest.
to be in their best interest, and
above our own.
above our own. And so, we're definitely, you explain the situation, and you have the conversation, you're paying $100,000 more for this piece of property now. What's the likelihood of the appreciation? Is this a sound investment? You're looking at from the buyer agent, you're probably looking at it from that standpoint, and then from the seller standpoint, you're looking at it again. Our job when they hire us is to quickest amount of time, most amount of money for the highest price, in the quickest amount of time. And sometimes, if somebody's paying cash and doing the quick close and that type of thing.
Does it scare the hell out of you?
It does.
At all? It scares the hell out of you? The scenario he just gave, $400,000 asking price for a home that is not large, okay? And on a small, not small, but on a
Yes, quarter acre.
Quarter acre, okay? We're not talking acreage here. Quarter acre. And it's coming in $100K over asking price in all cash scenarios. Does that scare you?
It does. It's terrifying. The thing that's, again, I think I've mentioned this earlier. When I bought my first house with Dan McDougall and River Run, I think I paid just over like 125, 129. Like it was under 130. I know that. My interest rate was higher. Like I think probably
was it 6 and an eighth?
6 and 8, 7%. Something like that. And now those are selling for just under $300,000. The same townhouse. But I never, and I think when I started all those years ago, I never really thought that they would get that high. Entry level to me was the 130.
Yeah. Right.
You can't get anything. You can hardly get anything for 130 now. So it is
to go to Martinsville.
It's very scary. Nikki touched on it briefly. The median income being in the 30,000. 31,000.
Mm-hmm.
They'd have trouble at 130.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the household median is 59, so almost 60. But even that, if we're talking household, that's not a lot. And
Right.
that's our median income.
So Bill McKenzie watches this program all the time, and he says, you guys at this table will be retired, sitting in your home one day, facing the same scenario, unless localities come up with a real rational way to protect us retirees. Get ready and prepare for it.
Well, I do think that addressing that
Talking
challenge
to us,
for people
he's
on
right.
fixed
Yeah,
income-
He's right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think we're all at an age where I'm not sure that we'll have the ability to do something that looks like traditional retirement. I don't know. I know I've not done the traditional work situation for enough years to have built into any of that. So my situation is definitely different, and I think there are a lot of us at our age or lower who are looking at a lack in the traditional retirement income, which is why a lot of us are interested in getting into real estate to begin with, because it is one of the best ways to change your life direction, right? Whether it's buying your own home or getting into this as an industry. But the fact that this is a challenge that is being faced by so many of our community being on a fixed income is a problem. Or many of those who have that home that's been passed from generation to generation, and now they're being taxed out of being able to afford to live there. That's a problem that does need to be addressed.
Amen. Absolutely, amen. So we'll wind down here. We're going to try to get to, guys, it's 11:40, so I'm not sure we're going to be able to get to all these viewers and listener comments. You guys were on fire today. You were absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Great show from two professionals that know what they are talking about. We all appreciate these two and these shows. This is one of the best shows in the 10:30 slot. Thank you.
Well, our non-present guests make this show truly.
No doubt.
The shows where they're engaging and they ask questions and they share information and
The
correct
viewers and
us
listeners.
because bless you, thank you for correcting
Yes.
us. But you make this.
Yeah, I totally agree. Tara, the gap between the haves and the have-nots is widening as prices go up, not just in the city, but everywhere. Unfortunately, public service, police, fire, nurses, rescue, teachers are being either pushed out of the area or forced to continue to rent because when something affordable comes on the market, there are multiple offers and they're usually outbid and can't offer terms that are as desirable as higher income buyers. The supply of smaller affordable homes is now a finite number. They don't build neighborhoods of small 250K starter homes anymore. And back to condos, a lot of the affordable housing issues could be resolved if regulators would allow low down payment financing on them. Seems like a no-brainer to me, but that kind of change has to start with the banking regulation. That's a hell of a comment right there, Tara Savage. And that comes down to warrantable and non-warrantable scenarios because the folks that purchase in a condo environment do not own the dirt. All right, how about some closing thoughts here? Dude, I've been in here, you guys, Amanda, you've definitely been here longer than I have. I've been here since 2000. I've been here 22 years.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Okay, I've never seen the climate or the dynamic or the pulse of the community more concerned or worried than I do right now when it comes to housing. I mean, it is, the sales that we're seeing it's beyond sticker shock. Mm-hmm. And it's going to get worse because we're under inventoried and people are flooding to this area to live. So why don't we close on a closing thought on that here. I know that's a lot to unpack, but like
No pressure.
What we do, where we go, what we can expect, what is the next 18 months to 24 months look like for you? And even if it's even if it's concern and not doom and gloom, because we don't expect the market to go in the you-know-where, but we do expect more of this bananas, more of this pricing. I think it's important for the community to know the truth. And they count on you.
Right, absolutely. I don't know that it's there. I don't know that it's going to get better for a long period of time. Unless there is a huge influx of new communities where there's lots of building going on, that you can, that there's an influx of homes for people who are local to do the move up thing, so that we can have some inventory in the resale where people are going from the townhome to the single family detached, where there is a natural progression of move up, and so I don't know. I don't want to be doomsday, but I don't know that it's going to get. There's not an overnight fix.
This is not going to get better soon.
It's not going to get better soon.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot. I mean, I think I went to the economic thing for the Blue Ridge home builders just a couple weeks ago, and one of the things that I think they said is like the home building in general is like 2 or 3 years behind where, like, if you were like to look at like the curve or whatever, is behind, and we just don't have that influx of the new inventory to take place for the people who are here to move up to. And then we have one of the largest buyer pools in the history of American history, millennials coming into the market. Right.
On top of that, we have the University of Virginia enrolling more students and hiring more people.
Right.
And we haven't even seen the data science school open on Ivy Road, a $125 million facility that's going to attract the best of the best from an intellect and wealth standpoint, and the influence that's going to have on the community.
Right.
I mean, it's freaking crazy, and it's not going to get better soon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be doomsday, because I don't think it's doomsday, but I do think I say this all the time. Real estate's you have to play the long game. It's a long game. It's not a short game. I just don't know that there's any short term or any quick solution to solve the problem.
Nikki, what do you think? Hey, great take.
Thank you. Yes. So I think one of the big things that we can do, and one of the best things we can do, is first be prepared for what the market really is. Mm-hmm. Be realistic about what you're coming into, whether you're a buyer or seller, right? Because even as a seller, I heard about a house over the weekend that was overpriced, and that's still not going to go. If you're not pricing your house at a point where people can compete and bid and do this, then it's not going to go. Not at the price you're trying for, and not as quickly as it could, right? So that is still part of our market. You can't still just slap an outrageous price on something. in a rural area and think, oh, but the market's great, right? It's not a thing. The other thing is to reevaluate, what is it that you really want, right? What is important to you? Because your options are narrow. And sometimes they're just not great at all. So what is it you're willing to do to get into a house, right? And what kind of house are you willing to accept? Maybe it's worth getting something that is not ideal just to be able to stabilize that income or maybe get into the area that you want, because it's now a stepping stone. Call it a 3 to 5 year plan, or maybe it's a 1 to 3 year plan. Get into something, buy it, and then, okay, hopefully your income over the next 3 to 5 years is going to increase. This market, while it is crazy, we talked a couple weeks ago about it has to at some point chill out, right? It's not going to crash. There's not a bubble, but it will calm down just a little bit at some point. It has to. So with that happening, if you just get into something now, using a long-term vision, thinking about the future instead of just today, then you have a much better shot and a better chance at getting what you want in the future.
Good sound. Well said.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Hey, this is amazing. Good job, seriously.
Thank you.
And thank you,
Yeah.
Amanda,
Thank you.
so much for joining.
Amanda,
Truly, that
you.
perspective and that
She's
history that you
phenomenal.
have is fantastic. And what you're able to share on these things and
Yeah.
share well.
Amanda, you're a natural in the
Crazy
setting.
knowledgeable.
Thank you.
Seriously,
Thank
the
you.
show's supposed to go to 11:15. It's 11:46. Excellent work.
Thank you.
Yeah. Amanda Spagoti, guys, and Nikki Chambliss said this was one of the most fun shows we've done on this network. It was truly a joy. Judah Wickhauer keeps us online. My name is Jerry Miller, and this is Real Talk and the Monday Market Monitor, presented by Keller Williams Alliance, powered by Segura Solar. And thanks to our partners at Closure Title and Allied Property Management, and Yes Realty Partners for being a part of the show. The I Live Seville show is up in 45 minutes, and we're going to talk similar topics on the program. You guys have a good morning. Take care.